Module 8. So we are going to get into the information regarding Step Up to Writing. This is something that we've shared, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and so I don't know if Crystal has seen any of this at all, because I know last year was her first year teaching, and so for the rest of you, this would be a review of the information, just kind of like a refresher, and we're going to go through it. We're going to give it justice, but we're also going to go a little bit faster than we did when the first time we rolled it out. But if at any time, any component that we explain, you would like us to model for you and show you step by step how to do that, how it would look in the class, feel free to let us know, and we can just stop and we can show you specifically what it looks like, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go through the English slide deck, but I do want you to know that all of this information is also in Spanish, and all of the resources are also in Spanish as well. And as we're going through each step, if there's anything Spanish specific that you would like to know about, then please feel free to ask any of us. Well, Ms. Vasquez or Mr. Martinez could probably help you with how would this look in a Spanish version in class. So depending on whether you're doing this during your English time or your Spanish time, the strategy is the same. It's just a matter of the language difference. So just wanted to let you guys know that all of the resources for both are here. There's a lot of information here on this slide deck that's linked, and we're not going to go through all of it. We're only going to go through the Step Up to Writing routine. Okay, so there is some information here on scholar starters and how to engage your students in language acquisition using sentence frames and using thinking maps, and it's all very, very good information as well. So if at any point you want to go back and look through those slides on your own, feel free to do that. So we're going to talk about the structured writing process, and the reason why we started rolling this out a couple of years ago was because we realized that when it comes to student testing with writing, the students would often be blank. So when given a prompt, the students would spend so much time just sitting there doing nothing because they didn't even know really where the first place was to start. So we started to package certain techniques to create a routine for the students to be able to think of what it is that they're going to be writing. And so we saw that there was an importance in the need for explicitly teaching the routine and the steps for the writing process. And so everything that you see here are the different stages that they're going to be going through and that you will be going through with the students. So for stage 1, it's going to be a lot of teacher modeling, and the students will be watching and listening and copying pretty much what you're saying and the steps that you're taking. When we go to stage 2, the teacher, you're going to be the scribe. So you're going to get responses from the students and ideas from the students, and then you're going to write what it would look like. You're going to kind of prompt the students to think aloud about whatever the prompt is, and then be able to structure the writing for them so that they're actually watching you do it. Stage 3 then is where we then release the students to not depend so much on you, but where they're going to start collaborating more with a small group. And so whatever the prompt is about, they have the student-to-student peer time to discuss some ideas that they would be able to use in a writing piece. And then once the students get to stage 4, they would have already had enough ideas to be able to write a full paragraph or a full essay, depending on what grade level we're talking about here. So these are just the different stages and steps of Step Up to Writing and this routine that we're going to be sharing with you today. One of the things that we realized that was missing from writing instruction before is just not giving the students enough time to plan and figure out what they're even supposed to be writing about. So we wanted to share with you some tips in order to keep your students from becoming frustrated and then go blank on testing. So this is the writing process here, and you'll notice in red we've added that planning stage, and the planning stage happens before the pre-writing stage. So normally most of the TPT posters that are out there, or the posters you can buy from the teacher store, they always start with the pre-writing, and then they work their way through the organizing and drafting, editing and revising, and then moving on to publishing. But the two pieces that we emphasize in this routine are what you see in red, which is the planning, and then what you see in yellow, which is the collaborative piece. And those are two very important pieces that need to happen even before they start writing. So all three that you see there on the top are all things that occur without even having to put a pencil to paper. Okay.
And then Tina, if I may share, also, I know through, and we know, as Tina mentioned, you guys have already seen this forms, many forms of the writing process. Through our credential programs, we also get to see some forms of it. But as Tina mentioned too, this is, we really are attempting to bring through this whole routine the importance of each of the stages, and super deep into each of the stages, to where it's equally important for the students to write, but as Tina just mentioned, it's equally important for them to plan, to pre-write, for us to do a collaborative. So it goes a little bit slow, but we start slow to go really, really fast once the students, that's the whole idea behind this. We started a little slow, we start with 3 steps because it's paper and a pencil, or pencil to paper, but then it's to go fast. So that's the idea here.
Okay, please let me know, or try to like wave me down if my sound is messing up for like a long period of time. I know sometimes it'll happen for a little while and then it'll be okay, but if it's for a long period of time, please let me know. Okay, so I'm going to go, since we have 3 through 5 teachers here in attendance, I'm going to go ahead and just strictly talk to you about the 3-5 routine. So as we were talking about, when we added the planning stage here, we have a specific routine where it's going to unpack what the genre elements are that the students need to know in order to respond to the prompt. So if it's a narrative, explaining what elements are involved in a narrative that they're going to need to include with their response. If it's an opinion, what needs to be included in an opinion, etc. So, so we review some, their TPR movements, actually, total physical response movements, of the specific things that need to be in a narrative, an opinion, and an informational piece. Another part of the planning routine is what we call the do and the what. And so that's where we're going to dissect the prompt. And so the students are very clear. We know that student clarity is super important in order for the students to be able to be successful. They need to be very clear on what the expectations are. And so this routine, the dissecting the prompt of the do and the what, will help nurture that. We also will share just the different types of structure pieces in regards to Step Up to Writing with the color coding, because if you're not familiar with Step Up to Writing, it's based on, they have some color coding strategies that help the students remember what sentences they need to have in the paragraph. Then we're going to move on to the pre-writing. And the pre-writing is where we share with you certain thinking maps, or maybe the way that you can use Avid Notes in order to have the students be organized with what they're going to be writing. And then we are going to move to the collaborative writing piece, where again, we are going to mention the TPR discussion and have a discussion. So we're verbalizing what types of sentences we could put, but again, we're not writing just yet, and we're acting out our sentences. And that's going to be right here when we get to this TPR discussion piece. We're also going to be talking about a writing sketch map, and again, to help the students organize their writing and their thinking. And then once we get into the organizing and drafting, we're going to take all of the things that we gathered from our planning and our collaborating, and now we're going to start putting it to paper. And then there's a little routine that this editing and revising routine here that you see kind of in, I don't know, this middle one down here on the bottom. This is going to be week 2. So the last 2 boxes that you see here, editing and revising and publishing and celebrating, those 2 pieces would be like week 2 of the whole writing process. And the first week, they'll be able to do the planning, the pre-writing, the collaborating, and the organizing and drafting. Any questions at this point?
I love that you just said 2 weeks.
Yes. Yes,
that's exactly what Perez and I went through.
Guideline, yeah. But for some it may take 3 weeks, or you know, for some it might take a little bit longer.
That
shorter.
Officially cemented what we physically experienced. You know, like there's no way you can complete this in 2 days. They need a week to do what you mentioned, and there's still a week of editing and revising and publishing and celebrating.
Exactly.
So thank you.
Sure.
That totally tied
I'm
it.
glad. I'm so glad. Thank you for sharing that, Gisela. Okay, and this is just to show you the skeleton, basically, of the elements that we were talking about earlier. These are the elements that are expected to be within these 3 types of writing, so you can take a look at that. And this is also in your Step Up to Writing teacher guide. So I wanted to share with you some posters that we have here of what writing could look like in your grade level. And I know that Triple Crown, during the time that this was rolled out, and by the way, they also have them, we also have it in Spanish, but I'm going to open up the English posters right now. So what we created at Triple Crown specifically were these expectations for what the students should be writing at every single grade level. And the idea behind this is to basically get the students to master writing within a certain time, so that each grade level would teach a specific component of it, and to build on from the previous year, not to reteach and say, okay, well, this is the way I teach writing now, and so they have to relearn the whole process, because that's what we found was happening before. The students could never get that routine of what writing looks like, because every teacher teaches writing a little bit differently, and everybody's version of what a paragraph is different. So for some, a paragraph is 5 sentences. For some, a paragraph is 8 sentences. And so in order to stick with a routine and to be consistent, Triple Crown created a grade level by grade level expectation of what is a paragraph, what are we going to include in a paragraph, and what are we going to include in an essay for each grade. So since we're with 3rd grade right now, let me go ahead and go to 3rd grades. These are the expectations for a 3rd through 5th grade writing. So they're going to have a total of, and this is just for 1 paragraph. This is not for an essay. This is just for 1 paragraph. They would have the topic sentence, which is in green right here, to include these components. And then the light purple is to introduce the problem of the story if we're talking about a narrative. And then they're going to elaborate, include some dialogue, figurative language in the darker purple here. So the narrative for Step Up to Writing, the colors are green, dark purple, and light purple. And so each of those colors mean that they need to include a specific information within that paragraph. So total, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 sentences for a juicy paragraph for a narrative. And then of course, if we're talking about an essay, we can take the middle chunks of these and create separate paragraphs to build multiple body paragraphs for the essay. For an informational or opinion piece, these would be the step up to writing colors. So literally before the sentences, the students would like color in the dot. So, okay, here's my hook. I'm going to color in a little, excuse me, a blue circle, and then I'm going to write my hook sentence right next to it, or my attention grabber next to it. And then I'm going to get into stating the claim, if this is my informational, or stating the opinion, if this is an opinion piece. And then the yellow is going to be for details, and then the reds are going to be for the students to elaborate, explain, and cite their evidence. And each of these would be a sentence. And the same thing, there's 11 sentences here as well. And so that's for 3rd grade through 5th grade. I also wanted to share with you this link actually right here. What could writing look like in my grade level? So if you wanted to see the grade levels expectations before they come to you, this would be where you could go to find that. Slide 9 will show, sorry, my computer's slow. Slide 9 is going to show what the short paragraphs should look like for kindergarten through 2nd grade. So these would be the sentence expectations for the narrative in kinder, 1st and 2nd. And then these would be the sentence expectations for paragraph for an informational and opinion for kinder, 1st, and 2nd. And you can see here that as each year progresses, we're adding more detail to it. And so the students will hopefully by the end of the year master the expectations from the year before. And so then all you would say is, okay, now we're going to add for 2nd grade, for example. Before you had 1 example sentence, now we're going to add 2 example sentences to support your topic, your detail. And so then when we get to 10th grade, when we get to slide 10, we are going to see here the 3rd through 5th grade expectations, and you'll notice that 3rd, 4th, and 5th have the same expectations, because it's going to take more than just 1 year to master how to structure and organize an essay. So starting in 3rd grade, the expectations are that it's an essay, right? It's multiple paragraphs now. And so this is explaining that. So it's a good visual there for the teacher and for the students. And just so that you know, the posters that were shared here before, if you would like for them to be printed out, they send them to print shop. You'll probably see your partner teacher will already have these. They'll have probably one in English, and right next to it, the one in Spanish. So if you're teaching writing in English, they can see it in English, and when you're teaching writing in Spanish, they could see it side by side like that in Spanish. And Print Shop will create posters for it, so you can just like probably check with your partner teacher to see the size and everything that they did, so that it'll be easier for you to request that. All right, so we already talked about the structures for the narrative and for the informational. So these cards that you see here, right over here, the setting and characters, the problem, the action, and the solution, these are the elements that are required in a narrative. And so when we talk about the TPR, the total physical response, the students will have these picture cards in their hand, and they'll be up in front of the classroom, and then they'll be moving these things around to organize themselves in how to build the sentences together. And then it's kind of like a class collaboration routine, and this is part of the before even putting it to paper, they're just verbalizing it, and they're using each other and the whole class to help structure it. I'm going to go ahead and click on the 2 through 5 routine. This is one of the parts of the planning stages here. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this graphic organizer here, if you've used this before, but this is one of the first steps to building a paragraph or an essay. And so let's say you are given a writing prompt, or your students are given a writing prompt, and they're going to look at this. So I'll take the narrative prompt right now that you see here, and it says to write a paragraph about a time you were scared. Use vivid details and dialogue to tell your story. So if we're writing a paragraph about a time we were scared, we are going to dissect this prompt right here. We're going to dissect that and put it into 3 parts. The first part is, what is it that the prompt is telling us to do? What is the prompt telling us to produce? And then what is the prompt telling us to actually write about? In other words, what's the topic or what's the focus? Is there anyone in here that's connected now that has not done this before or seen this before, that would need a further explanation or maybe to show how this is done? So Hisela and Sochi, you pretty good on this? You remember this? And then Bertha and Crystal, you're good on this piece. Okay, so perfect. So we'll move on. Just a reminder that this is linked to an actual document right here where it says do and what graphic organizer. And then at the end of this module, I'm going to share with you the 1-pager resources that are all in English and in Spanish of all of this and for all of the routines. Okay, then the next thing here so the next step is, the first step is dissect the prompt. Then the next step would be for the students to remember what are the elements needed in a specific genre. And so we have linked and created some videos here of a TPR routine that will show the students what's expected. And so, for example, I'm just going to show you just the narrative one for now. And I'm not sure if you all use this. Thumbs up if you can hear the screen once it starts, the video once it starts playing.
With a problem. With some action. And an end. With a solution. And a conclusion.
Did you guys hear that okay? Okay, and so we have a written script for them as well as part of that 1-pager resources. And so that would be the second step, just ensuring that the students know exactly what they need to include when they're writing a narrative, when they're writing an opinion, and what they're writing in an informative essay or paragraph. So that would be the step 2, routine 2. Routine 3, after those 2 would then be to start sketching out, and this is the first time we're going to start putting pencil to paper or fingers to keypad. You guys are not laughing at my jokes. Okay, so I'm going to go to the 3rd grade informational opinion sketch map here. And so this is what we would do after we already have our sentences in mind from what we built as a team, from getting what happened in the beginning, what happened in the middle, like the problems, what happened, what was the problem, what was the action, and how did it get resolved. So when we see this sketch map here, and this is going to be for an informational piece to start off with, or opinion, we would, of course, have the students write their name because they're going to be the author of this. They're going to start writing down, sketching or bullet points. What is their hook going to be, or what's their idea for the hook. Then they're going to type in their strong claim right over here, or if it's an opinion, they would type in their opinion, and then their first detail or their first reason, their supporting examples for that, and then so they're going to have it up to 3 good reasons or 3 good details. And then we leave off with a powerful conclusion, just as the TPR chant mentioned, right? So they're just going to do jotting. This is just going to be quick phrases or one word, or it could be pictures, just to remind them what it was that they came up with as they were doing this as a group. Then this is an example of what it would look like in essay form. And so it would be just taking each of the paragraphs that were developed before and then jotting down the pieces here, okay? Then there's another one for narratives as well. The narratives are pretty much the same, except for it has the elements of a narrative. And so there's the hook, the setting, the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, the end, and then the clever conclusion. The only thing I want to share with you on this sketch map for a narrative is that it's recommended that you actually have the students start right here on this 3rd box on the top. And the reason it's recommended is because it's easier for the students to remember the main problem in the story. And then once they remember the main problem of the story, then it's easier for them to know what were the details that happened right before and what were the details that happened right after. And so that's why it's recommended to start at the problem and then work their way back and then continue to rock and roll. And this is just, 2nd page is just a different version, more of a linear version of a graphic organizer. Any questions on the sketch map? Okay. Now, once it's in bulleted form or picture form, jotted form, then we're going to move on to actually for the first time putting their ideas into complete thoughts and complete sentences on this part right over here. You'll see it's pretty much you're taking the sketch map. Let me go to the narrative. You're taking each box of the sketch map and then it becomes a separate page here. Okay, so what you see on the top left is the same thing. They could even just like use Post-it notes for the other graphic organizer so that they can peel it off from that one and then stick it on here so that they can remember, okay, now I'm going to take those ideas and on these lines, I'm going to start creating full sentences. So I know I'm going to start with my hook. So this first box here is going to be my hook box. And then on the next page here on page 2, which they all look the same, page 2, this is going to be my my first paragraph. So this is going to be my problem box, you know, and so on and so forth. And so this just gives them the lines to go ahead and write full sentences. What I wanted to show you down here on the corner bottom left of each graphic organizer page here is just some things to think about that the students could include to level up their writing. So if they haven't included dialogue, this is just a reminder, let's include dialogue so that we can level it up because this is a narrative. Make sure they're including the way the author is thinking, what the, or not the author, include what the characters are thinking to develop the story a little bit better. Add some figurative language. Mention anything that had to deal with a dilemma. Where we're incorporating some ethics into this. And so I also wanted to let you know that on our last module, module 10, you're gonna notice, you're gonna see these little icons again. These icons right here, starting with the figurative language, you'll see the lips here, and for ethics, you'll see the black and white diamond, the question marks for unanswered questions, and then the eyeglasses for multiple perspectives. These 4 icons right here have to do with our 8 icons. And so there are ways to get our students to be thinking a little bit deeper and complex with what they're learning. And so we added them here because we want to make sure they incorporate that deeper and more complex thinking while they're generating the story to respond to the prompt. So we'll talk about more about what those look like in our last module. Okay, any questions on the writing the full complete thoughts part of the routine? Okay, that is week 1. So again, step 1 would be the dissecting the prompt. Step 2 would be the collaborating part, which is the TPR, total physical response chance, so that they are understanding the genre that they're actually going to be writing, and so they'll incorporate all of those elements. Then they're going to start writing down the sketch box, the single sketch boxes. It could be pictures, it could be jotted down bullet points just to remember what they're going to be writing about. And then the 4th step would be to now we're going to those ideas and create complete sentences. And so then we move on to week 2, and then week 2, as I mentioned earlier on, is the editing, revising, and the publishing part of the routine. And I say week 2, but it might be like, it might take you a week and a half to do the first part, especially in the beginning of the year, right? So you're reminding them about the routines again. And before you get into the editing and revising. Okay, so the whole idea behind this week would be for them to take their writing and level it up. It's not, the point of leveling up the writing is not like taking your red pen and just like chicken scratching all of their mistakes. Number one, it's too much for you to grade, and for them it becomes overwhelming, and then they'll become frustrated and be like, oh my gosh, well, I don't even know where to begin on making my writing better, because it seems like I have to rewrite the whole thing. Forget this, you know? So instead of doing that, this component here is meant to identify at least 2 things. One thing would be to identify an area that needs to be edited to make it look better, and then maybe one thing to show your students of a way to revise their writing to make it sound better. And so that's being able to understand, for the students to understand that revising is going to are going to be changes that are going to make your story sound better, and then editing are going to be the changes that are going to make your writing look better. And so we're going to take one of each and turn those into little mini lessons. So as you're reading, you're walking around watching your students writing, you can automatically see, oh my gosh, why is everybody forgetting to put the commas? I don't understand. Like, how often do I have to explain to them that they need to add commas when they're writing a list in a series? And so if you see that's something that a lot of your students are doing wrong, then that would be the one thing that you use as a little mini lesson during week 2 to focus on for grammar, is writing commas in a series. If you see that your students are not incorporating dialogue into their narratives, and they're not bringing some of that dialogue into their writing explanation, then adding dialogue might be the revision mini lesson that you use to share for week 2. Okay, so this is Monday that we're looking at right here on the screen. You're going to take that first draft, their first final draft, and then they're going to switch with a partner, and they're going to take turns reading each other's draft. They're going to be listening to the story or the whatever informational, and they're going to listen for sharing one compliment about that partner's writing, and then one suggestion for that partner's writing. And then there's some some speaking frames that they can use that we also have included on the one-pager resource list that I mentioned. I'll share with you. And then they switch roles. Okay, so this gives them a chance to listen to their own writing out loud because they're reading it to their partner. And then it gives their partner some practice in their listening skills because they know they have to listen for a compliment and for something that they want to share they could improve. Then on Tuesday, based on the students' observations and the teacher will provide that mini lesson that I'm talking to you about on the revision. So if it's dialogue, then on Tuesday, it's going to say, okay, guys, you know, I noticed that a lot of you had a hard time or forgot to include dialogue into your writing. So let's practice, you know, what that looks like and how you're supposed to set it up. Where does the quotation go? Where does the comma go and all of that? So that's kind of your Tuesday mini lesson. So that's going to be one thing that's going to make their writing sound better. And then they're going to take that that draft and then that night, let's say for homework, they're going to take all of those tips in mind from the mini lesson, and then they're going to rewrite it to make it sound better for homework that night, okay? Then on Wednesday is going to be the mini lesson that you're going to have on the edits. So we talked about maybe it's the commas in a series. So now we're going to have our little grammar lesson on when do we need to use commas? What are some examples of what that looks like? And maybe using some of their sentences to show the examples of what needs to be improved on. And then for that night, for that homework night, Wednesday night, okay, now it's time to write that paragraph, but you're going to fix those commas now. You're going to make sure you have the commas in the right place. And then by that time, they would have leveled it up to make it sound better. They would have leveled it up to make it look better. And so now we're on Thursday. So now we have all of those changes to bring to the table on Thursday. And so now what they're going to do is they're going to share their writing again with their partner. They're going to take turns reading it again with their partner, and then make any final changes. So, okay, I corrected everything. I changed, I added all of the tips that were recommended. Is there anything else you think that I need to fix or change? And they would kind of give suggestions at that point. And then if they don't have anything they need to change, then they're done. Their final draft is done. If there's something that they need to fix, well, they could do it for homework and come back the next day so that they're going to be ready to publish it, share out their final draft, or post their final draft on the wall. And then on Friday, since the final draft will be done, then they're going to basically they're going to read their writing to their partner again. And then this time, the partner or the listener is going to formulate 3 leveled questions. And we go by the Costa's levels of questioning for AVID, okay? So they can choose 3 AVID Costas questions and ask their partner something about their written piece. And what this is doing, this is making sure that their partner is actually listening to what the reader is sharing and could provide some helpful feedback too for the students. And if there's any questions about it, that may be something to consider of, oh, I should have mentioned that in my writing, you know, so maybe next time I'll remember to add that because my partner had still at the end of the story had a question about it. So it's great for oral and listening practice, especially for week 2, tons and tons of oral and listening language practice. So whatever language you're instructing your writing on for that week, those are some great, week 2 is a great time to practice those skills. And that's pretty much it. Any questions on that? I know it's a lot, but I know a lot of it is probably a review. Hopefully it was a great refresher. But if you have any questions or ideas of things that you've done that you would like to share, please do so now. That would be great.
Tina, I'd like to just share, if you can go back that one slide, that just a couple of points about especially week 2, the activity behind week 2. All of those activities, as Tina mentioned, is to level up. And so as teachers, a lot of the times we can't help but really want to fix every single thing because we want our students to have like a perfect week or at the end of the week, right? I'm sorry, you probably heard staticky. Yeah, sorry. I don't know what it is. It's been doing it from the very beginning. But the idea behind the week 2 is, again, to level it up, taking it, meal piecing it for the students to where it's not too overwhelming for them. One or two things to make it sound better, one or two things to make it look better. And then if you're doing this activity, let's say one whole paragraph or one whole essay, which, by the way, I'm sure Tina mentioned it and I had to step out for a minute, but it's really, really recommended that you do this kind of activity, not with an essay, but with a short paragraph, because then it really becomes too much for the students. So you want to start doing this with short little paragraphs and go through the whole entire routine. But again, just making it sound better little by little, making it look better little by little, and every single paragraph or every single writing prompt that you provide to your students as the year goes by, then you focus on different things. So then that's one. And then you saw the analogy of the clay, the potter, right? Who's creating. And so the idea behind this last little picture right here is when you have your students showcase their writing, the writing comes in so many different forms, so many different ways, and it's just a beautiful thing to be able to showcase and have the students feel very, very proud. Some of the writing's going to look very different. Some of the writing's going to look very similar to maybe something that you modeled. Some students may need more modeling, and so it's going to look very similar to yours. I'll tell you, like my kids right now in high school, they're saying like, oh, well, I'm just going to follow exactly what my teacher said. That's how my teacher started. That's how I'm going to start. This is the 3 claims. I'm just going to include 3 claims. And that's fine. Sometimes that's going to happen. But sometimes students also want to just go take off and do their own little twist to their writing. And so that's why this analogy here. Just celebrating whether it looks very similar to yours, or different, or very different, as we see some of these pieces right here.
And then I think I forgot to share with you ladies, let me, hold on just a second. Those cards, those TPR cards that we were talking about, normally when we do professional development on this, we actually have you guys with the physical cards and moving around and coming up with sentences. But I wanted to share with you that slide I mentioned before that has all of the resources for all the parts of the routine. Those are right here. Can you still see my screen? Okay. So those are right here for English, and then right here for Spanish. And so let's just open up the Spanish one for now. Okay, so this is the actual presentation slide deck, and then this will be the overview, the big picture overview. But then when we start getting to the tools, so the sentence frames that I was mentioning to you, there's the sentence frames right here, and then these are specifically the graphic organizers and sentence frames in Espanol. These right here are those posters that we were sharing of the expectations of the different colors of Step Up to Writing and what the sentences represent for each color, for each grade level. That's here, but in Espanol. Then down here, we have all of the collaborating writing tools. So we have the TPR scripts, because on the videos, it's hard to hear what the kids are saying, because everybody's saying it all at one time. But there's the scripts here so that you can kind of go through that with the students in Spanish, and then all the TPR cards in Spanish as well for all the grade level spans, the sketch maps, the the videos are actually, all of these videos are actually, they're the same ones in English, but I sure would love if you guys use this to record your kiddos and yourself doing it, so that we can have add a Spanish version of the video here. That would be awesome. And then we've also provided in both the English and the Spanish ones, the K through 5 writing expectation rubrics. And so these rubrics are based on the Wonders / Maravillas rubrics that are the same ones that you guys use for benchmark writing for the district benchmarks as well, for the writing performance test. It's going to be the same rubrics there. And there's a couple of other tools here. There's some mentored text. So if you're teaching a specific component or element in a narrative, there are some suggestions right here in this for books that you can read that show really good samples of certain elements that you're wanting your students to use. So that's a helpful link right there. And then all of the dissecting of the prompt and how to create juicy sentences and all of those things are here as well. All in Spanish, but if you would like for them to be in English, then you would just click right here where it says English. All right. How you guys feeling? Feeling okay?
Good. I actually have a question for you guys.
Sure.
For the writing process, I know you guys talked a lot about, that partner sharing, and I do that in my own classroom already, but I've always kind of been wondering what other teachers think. Should you have the students paired up with the same partner throughout the whole prompt, process, or should they be switching with new partners? Or should, they not switch until they do a new writing essay, or kind of just how you guys feel about it as teachers as well?
I tend to mix it up. I do like them to have just a variety of different perspectives. So I try to do that, but at the same time, I still try to partner them up with, a good fit. But even within that, the next time I just try to switch it up again and, as much as I can.
And I think to remember too, it depends on how much time you have. So if for one routine or one read aloud, you have a certain partner, and then the next day for the second piece, you switch partners and they have a new partner now, it's just going to give them, they're going to have to kind of reread the whole thing again, which they'll have to do anyway, but you might have to, the reader might have to say, well, my last partner said I needed to fix, A, B, and C. And so that's what I did. So if you can now listen to make sure that I did that, that would be great, or something like that. If you stick with the same partner for that same writing, then it's just kind of like, it becomes ingrained. All of the things that they remember giving feedback, it just stays with them throughout the process. But it is good to change up so that the students can hear feedback from different kids too at the same time.
I've seen this, I'll share with you, I've seen this activity, especially the second week with high school kids, and it's very, very successful when you switch kids every day. But Tina's right, if the time constraint. A really cool tool, if you guys have heard of Flippity, that's a super cool tool. Tina, if you can just show us real quick. That's one where if you there is a step, there are quite some steps to create your little Flippity, but once you have it, it's not hard at all. Once you have it, it automatically, if you tell it to group students by 2 pair students, it'll do it automatically, and that's something that you can do, put on your screen, and then that's how they'll go. But I do love Bertha's take on that we still need to be very, so that's that. We can send this information right here, but Flippity's that, and then what it does, you can do spinners, groups of 2, groups of 2, right? That would be the one that we would need here.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the way they would do. There's a way to do it. Again, very, very simple, and you can modify it as you go if you lose kids or if you have new kids. But this is a really, really cool tool that you can use for that purpose. Just word of caution, if you do like the spinner piece, sometimes it does glitch and it tends to pick the same kiddo, the same student for some reason. So one of the things that they've suggested was to have the spin twice or spin 3 times to really change it up a little, or even these groups too, like change it like Tina's doing right now, like shuffle, shuffle, shuffle 3 times so you don't end up with the same ones. But super cool tool for that purpose. I think both are very, very valuable in the sense of allowing. It really does come down to the time, as Tina mentioned.
Any other questions? All right, and you know, feel free to reach out if you'd like for any of these parts to be modeled for you once we get started in the classroom, or virtually if you'd like for us to do kind of a demo lesson for you. We are more than happy to do that. Just please reach out.
And then one last thing, ladies, I remember Bertha and Gisela, I remember you ladies running into some of these resources in I think Michelle's office or something. Do you think that there's enough to provide Xochitl and Crystal with a Spanish version? Do you know anything about that? Because we definitely would like to make it accessible to you guys if you don't, like the cards and everything.
I want to say, I know for a fact I have enough for my class, and then I had a few extras, but what I would have to do is see which ones I have extras for. So truthfully, I'm not sure I have a second complete set of all of the stuff, all the resources, but I'll look, and maybe in between Gisela and I, we can figure out maybe if you have half of an extra set and I have another half, it might be enough to complete maybe one more, but I don't know if we have enough for 2 other teachers. That's the only thing.
Well, let us, because this is especially the TPR cards, they are pricey.
Oh, okay.
That is the students' tools and all of that, and so we would like to print that on our EL budget and not your DLI budget or personal side budget. So let us know if you're interested in any of that stuff, and we'd be happy to send it off to Pinshot.
And you know what? I have to remember, Giselle, do you remember if Michelle has had all of it and she gave us all of it, or did she take some of it and give us some of it? I can't remember. Because she might have more.
And I think what she has is in English, though, right? I mean, you're just talking about English, not Spanish, because
both, if you want.
Yeah, I have.
Especially in levels.
I'm gonna need another set. I never got a full set, and I just made copies of my own.
Okay.
On my own budget and on campus. So I would love to have an actual set that I can have just in the classroom, because I know Mayfield suggested, and I thought, oh my God, that's awesome. Put them in sleeves and just have a binder that stays in the classroom. And that was my mistake. I was like, oh, well, we just took off and ran with it, so I don't have a complete set of my own in Spanish. I have it in English, but I don't have it in Spanish.
Okay, now I feel bad because I may have been hoarding yours. Sorry.
I'm like, wait a minute.
She seems all innocent with that beautiful smile, but
I was like, Bertha?
We did
have the TPR cards in English already.
We have all the way through 5th, but I really can't remember because we printed like 3 years ago. So
yeah.
We'll make sure.
And I just heard the ones from 3 years ago. I think that's probably what I brought back from Rainbow to Triple Crown.
Okay, so I think I heard Crystal say that she has them already in English, but would definitely need them in Spanish. So it might be just worth it just to get 3rd through 5th grade in Spanish. And then you all have your English? I know Crystal does. What about?
I left mine in the classroom.
You left yours.
Second
Okay.
teacher coming in.
Okay. I just made a note of that. But if there's nothing else that you'd like to share, I just wanted to remind you all that our next module is all about the brain. And so we're going to go ahead and do that module on Wednesday. And then Wednesday later on, same day, we're going to have the last module, which is module 10, and that one is going to be on the gate icons. Okay, so we have 2 modules on Wednesday, pretty much back to back. I think there's like a 30-minute lunch break, in between, or do whatever you need to do kind of break, and then we'll reconvene and share module 10.
Yes, thank you.